Welcome to the Thresholds of Reality, the podcast where we explore unexplained and mysterious events, phenomena, and legends. Today, we are looking at a string of food and fuel factory fires that have occurred in the U.S. in the last year, and wondering, is there a connection with something that occurred 10 to 12 years ago called Stuxnet? Strap in as we explore the edges of the unknown. Well, Kyle, right before we went live, I just shared a song from a show that I love called Patriot. It's a weird name for the show, but it is Nathan. Hi, Nathan. Thank you for strapping in. It was from 2015, and it's about this guy. He's a spy, and he's tasked with helping keep Iran from getting nuclear capabilities, short-range nuclear capabilities. And what's interesting is that somebody, it hasn't been proven who, but it's like of the list of people who would be capable of such things, there's one name on the list. But somebody back in 2010 and 2011 undertook a cyber warfare activities to address Iran's nuclear aspirations. But where we want to start today is with the current events, right? That's 10, 12 years ago. That's ancient history. What does that have to do with what we're dealing with today? And what we wanted to start with was talking about a series of food and fuel processing plant fires that have been occurring in 2022, but they've occurred previously. But for some reason,
ramped up.
They seem to have ramped up, and so we're kind of scratching our heads, like, is this part of something larger? So just to kind of kick things off, I wanted to go and run down a list of these types of fires that have happened since the start of the year. Van Drunen Farms Tut Hill facility in Momence, Illinois, caught fire on January 2nd at 6 a.m. No employees on site. 7% of the 80,000 square foot Van Drunen Farms freeze drying facility was burned and declared a total loss. So 7% is a total loss. Van Drunen has plants all over the country, but this is their largest main facility. Cargill Nutrina on January 13th. No injuries. Burned for 12 hours. Oregon Potato Company, Warden, Washington, January 22nd. Winston Weaver Company, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, January 31st. Wisconsin River Mints, Mauston, Wisconsin, February 3rd. Louis Dreyfus Company, Claypool, Indiana, February 16th. Best View Farm, St. Albans, Vermont, February 18th. Shearer's Foods, Hermiston, Oregon, February 22nd. Nutrient Ag Solution, Sunnyside, Washington, February 28th. Nestle Frozen Foods, Jonesboro, Arkansas, March 16th. Wayne Hoover Farm, Long Swamp Township, Pennsylvania, March 13th. Plainfield Walmart Fulfillment Center, Avon, Indiana, March 16th. Penobscot McCrum Potato Processing, Belfast, Maine, March 24th. Maricopa Food Pantry, Maricopa, Arizona, March 28th. I'm going to kind of speed up because there's still a lot to get through. March 31st, April 11th, April 13th. California, April 13th. Dufur, Oregon, April 19th. Leoti, Kansas, April 19th. Covington, Georgia, April 21st. Chesapeake, Virginia, April 30th. Alberta, Canada, May 22nd. Stockholm Township, Minnesota, May 28th. Green Bay, Wisconsin, June 7th. And as of the date of this particular article, Belmont, Wisconsin, June 13th.
So it looks like they took a month off.
Which month are you talking about? Because
They went
it's
from April 30th to May 22nd. They took
3 weeks. 3 weeks.
It must have been vacation time.
Yeah. In addition to the food processing plant fires, there was a fire at a fuel processing plant, natural gas plant in Oklahoma on, let's see the date, July 9th, 2022. And then there was another fire in Kansas in April 2022 at, let's see, Haven, Kansas, April 14th, 2022. So there were 26 food processing plants and 2 fuel plants, natural gas fuel plants, that caught fire in 2022. Now, what's interesting about these fires is that almost nobody is injured. They take place at times where there's hardly anybody present. There's no signs of arson. Hi Nathan says, any correlation between the fires and unionizing activities? No, there isn't any correlation between those things. There's no effort to unionize being undertaken at the time these fires are going on. And the question is going out. Like, people are asking lots of questions. What's happening? And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we all have this kind of heightened sensitivity based on bare shelves, right? You go to the food store or your grocery store and toilet paper is missing, or baby formula is missing, and people are scratching their heads and asking questions. Why are all these plants going up in smoke, and is it affecting things? And there has been kind of a response by the media to investigate what is going on. And the answers all look pretty much the same. Nothing to see here. What's your take on that, Kyle?
Even Glenn Beck said that.
Even Glenn Beck said there's nothing to see here?
Yeah. I was reading an article that said Glenn Beck decided to look at it after Tucker Carlson said something about it. So he decided to look in it. And he said, that's pretty much what he said. Nothing to see here. Fires just happen. And to be clear, we don't have any evidence of anybody behind the fires. In fact, 2 of the fires were started when planes crashed into these facilities. Airplanes. Brian says, Tucker Tarleton. That's what I thought.
So they're all saying, look, there's really nothing to see here. There are over 36,000 food and beverage processing plants in the United States. This represents less than 1% of those facilities.
But it always seems like the bigger plants.
It does seem like the bigger plants. And one of the articles that I was looking at was saying, look, there's no way, like, none of the fires so far have been declared cases of arson. Why would they even try to do an attack this way? If you were a terrorist or foreign agent attempting to choke off the American food distribution network, why would you start with a potato chip maker in Oregon or Hot Pockets in Arkansas? Why would you do that rather than go to somewhere else? Why would you do that?
You take my Hot Pockets.
Save the Hot Pockets, save the world.
It's over. Yeah. When the Hot Pockets are gone, we all revolt.
And so I guess the question is this something? What's going on? Is there any possible correlation, connection between all of these fires
And if so, how is it being done? So we start with today, we start with the present, and then we have to go back in time about 10 or 12 years, Kyle, to the discovery of a computer. You want to say virus, you could say, but they called it a worm because it doesn't operate exactly like a virus. In fact, it's far more complex than a virus. And it's this thing that they dubbed Stuxnet. Have you ever heard of Stuxnet before?
Mm-hmm.
What do you know about Stuxnet?
I know it's only meant to target certain things, so it's really not targeted for the general user like me and you. It's not targeted for general companies. It's not meant to wreak havoc on regular people and organizations. It's targeted for a specific thing.
Yeah,
almost like a specific company programming.
Yeah, specifically electromechanical processes, like where you have a computer that controls some sort of mechanical process. And the most famous application of Stuxnet was targeted towards an uranium enrichment facility, specifically their centrifuges. And what it would do is it would speed up the centrifuge beyond what it was supposed to operate at, and then it would just kind of quietly disappear for a little bit or shut down for a little bit. And over the course of, I don't know how many days it did that, but it wore out the centrifuges to the extent that they wouldn't function anymore. And it effectively shut down. Like they have to spin at a certain speed in order for the centrifuges to function. And they effectively just eliminated all of the uranium processing or enrichment that Iran was trying to do in the early 2010s. And when it was uncovered, they were like, who did this? Who could possibly have accomplished the production of such a complex computer attack?
America.
What's that?
America.
America. Well, yeah, that's the prevailing theory.
Yeah. I read one article. There was this. So someone came out and kind of winked that it was America that did it.
Yeah, in fact, there was a guy who did a TED Talk, and he was kind of coy about who might have done it, and he said, well, it looks like it could be a collaboration between Mossad, Israel's defense force, and one other highly advanced cyber warfare nation state, of which the list of who those could be is one long. There's only one person. There's only one nation state on that list, and that is the United States.
I mean,
okay.
It only did affect 1.6% of the computers here.
Well, yeah. So it was found in only 1.6%, and that's an interesting statistic. I think the affected countries by Stuxnet, almost 60% of infected computers came from Iran, about 18% from Indonesia, 8.5% from India, 2.5% from Azerbaijan, 1.6% from the U.S., and 1.3% from Pakistan.
And that 1.6 was an accident.
Well, I think it had to go somewhere, right? They had to start somewhere to transport it. It doesn't just move from computer to computer on its own. But the fallout from this event triggered Iran to declare that it was not going to sit idly by while the U.S. tinkered with its cyber capabilities. And it vowed revenge. And Iran has been quiet pretty much since 2010, 2011 regarding these types of cyber attacks. Is it possible that what we're seeing now is something like Stuxnet or Stuxnet itself being turned against the U.S.? What are your thoughts?
I think Russia's doing it.
You think it's Russia? Well, before we get to who, I think it's important that we understand how, right? And so the most of the fires that I've seen, apart from the 2 plane crashes, have been the result of electromechanical malfunction.
Now, this is a thought that I actually had while I was reading these articles is, could it be that with it having these plants having to up more of their output, are they cutting corners by not updating or not fixing broken equipment? And now that we're seeing this, that's kind of the result that we're getting from it.
Yeah, so let's start from the vanilla explanation, which is, nothing to see here. This is all ordinary operation of things. We just wait until the equipment breaks before we repair it, because that's the most cost-effective way to do it. Is that a possibility? Okay, so we look at, I don't know if you're familiar with Occam's razor or just probability generally. You take, Occam's razor says the simplest explanation is the most likely. And the reason that is because of pure mathematics. And what pure mathematics says is the probability of a series of events is the multiple of the probabilities of each individual component. So if we want the probability of 26 to 28 food and fuel factory fires occurring in a year, we have to look at what's the probability of any one of those particular factories catching fire. And that's where the number of plants in the United States comes into play, because of the fact that any one of them could catch fire at any given time. Right, that's a pretty high probability that you have one fire during the year. What's the probability of 2? Well, it's slightly less. And every time that you multiply another one of these factory fires, the probability gets lower and lower and lower for all of them. So if we have 28, the probability that they all kind of accidentally happen gets smaller and smaller. And so is it possible? It certainly is possible that they all have a mechanical failure or electromechanical failure that results in fire during a year. But the probability of 28, that gets smaller and smaller.
Yeah. Because you could say the same thing. Well, underpaid employees who don't care.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that's, again, it's another thing. What is the likelihood that the employees themselves are so negligent that they neglect all of their safety protocols? It's their lives that are at stake, right? It's their lives that are at stake. So
I discount that one only because it seems like nobody ends up getting hurt, and it happens when there's little to nobody there.
Right, but if it was a random thing, if it were a random occurrence, it would happen randomly, which means you would expect at least, if they're open during normal business hours, you'd expect at least a third of them would occur when people are around.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not how it plays out. They're mostly happening late at night, early in the morning, when no one's around. There's no one around to be affected by it. Why is the factory even operating at all hours of the night if there's no one there? So there's throw me any explanation you want, but then the question is, how does it match up? When we look at other kind of conspiracy theories, you have to look at things like Jeffrey Epstein, right? When we kind of talked about that a little bit, but think about how many coincidences had to line up for us to accept that it was an accident, or that it was not, or that it was suicide, right? How many little coincidences have to line up? The probability of each of them is almost zero. The cameras are turned off, and the guards are sleeping, and his cellmate had been moved, and it just so happened that he had the sheets available to hang himself, and all this and all that. And every time you add an and, the total probability drops by another 90%, till the probability is almost zero. And that's kind of where I'm at now. Like 20, 2, 3, 10. We could look at that and say, okay, the probability of those, and if they were all kind of different circumstances, but every single one of these is the same, which is it occurs at off hours, no one around, no one injured. There's the first one is 6 a.m., no employees on site. 4 a.m., no injuries. The potato chips, that was a plane crash. Oh, no, that was a faulty boiler. Sorry. Faulty boiler. 7 employees checked into a nearby hospital. No serious injuries. It doesn't say what. Oh, it occurred around noon. Okay. So there's one during work hours. 7 p.m. in Winston-Salem. Let's see. Blaze was so large that it was allowed to burn. Everyone was ordered to evacuate. No injuries or deaths reported. Overnight fire in Wisconsin River, Mauston, Wisconsin. No livestock or employees injured. 8 p.m., no employees injured. Early morning, no injuries reported. That's what I'm talking about. It's like almost all of these, with like one or two exceptions, are happening late when there's no one around. So is it random? That's another question. Is it random?
By the consistency of it, it doesn't seem to be.
It doesn't seem random.
Just because it happens very shortly after another. Very shortly after another.
Yeah, they're like 1 or 2 weeks apart.
And I get it. They're trying to make it look it so that they're doing it across the country instead of focusing. But it's still like too close together.
So can we rule out random events? I mean, I think that's where most of the media is headed, is that they can't see enough of a connection to rule out just random occurrences. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're looking for arson, right? They're looking for accelerant. They're not looking for anything remotely like Stuxnet. No one's looking at these electromechanical processes and how they're being affected. They're all looking at motive and opportunity and accelerant, and trying to find other forms of foul play that you might see more commonly in intentional fires.
Well, if you keep those, while it's really something like a worm, then they could say there's nothing to see here. Oh, these are what everybody's used to see. These are the common things that everybody is known for. This is what arson is connected to.
Yeah.
but not this other side of doing it with technology.
Right. And so you're looking at just really traditional small time attacks. But if this is something that is highly technological, Iran wasn't looking for this type of attack when it got hit with Stuxnet. It never expected something like that. They had zero safety protocols to prevent it. And off it went, and it spun too fast, and it killed their uranium enrichment.
You would think something as classified and as not important, but like that they're doing that. You think they would put some kind of safety protocols in? Like we have so many protocols and stuff put in to guard from emails. So, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Like I deal with email problems every day because security is getting more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
But yet they're going to leave something as big as messing with uranium. Just nothing's going to get in there. You think you think just as a preventative you would want to put something in. But the thing with the Stuxnet too is it's something that's done via USB drives.
Yeah, it's also very complex. Even though it doesn't take a ton of code to do its thing, but it is bigger than your average virus. And it uses like these, they call them zero-day functions or 0 day.
0 days when you find out that it happens.
It says 0-day exploits. It uses exploiting 4 0-day flaws.
That means they haven't been found yet. They're new. There's nothing that messes with them yet.
All right. So it says a 0-day is a computer software vulnerability previously unknown to those who should be interested in its mitigation, like the vendor of the target software. Until the vulnerability is mitigated, hackers can exploit it to adversely affect programs, data, additional computers, or a network. Yeah, so the term 0-day refers to the number of days since the new piece of software was released to the public. Okay, so yeah. So it just means, like you said, it's new. It hasn't happened yet. So day 0, 0 day. Got it. With respect to the way that Stuxnet is embedded, is that it has to be uploaded to its target network. And the reason why it was a USB attack on Iran's uranium enrichment facility is that the facility itself was not linked to the internet. They had to make it secure. And so they had it on a completely private network, and it was not even physically attached to the internet. So they did have to upload somebody, or have somebody upload it to their system. But is that the case with all these factories?
Can you imagine being that guy? Jones. You're going to go in there and you're going to put a USB drive in.
Yeah, in Iran, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because like what's his name? If you watch that movie of how he snuck the USB drive out. What's his name? The guy that did the
Edward Snowden?
Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he had to sneak a USB drive out. Like, I wondered if there was a protocol to sneak the USB drive in. Like,
yeah.
I actually lost my train of thought.
Okay, well, that's fine. So the question is,
how to get it in there. That's what I'm saying. It's just,
yeah. How do they get it in? The way that you have to attack a factory is first off, is the system itself that is operating these mechanical features that go up in flames, are they separate from the internet?
Not much is anymore.
Because most of these mechanical processes have an operating system that has to be updated from time to time.
And the other thing you got to always remember too about stuff like this is companies aren't going out and buying the greatest and best and new technology because it's expensive. So almost every company out there is behind. You're using old, outdated equipment. So, you know what I mean? Who knows what people have to do that? Like, that's the biggest problem is this equipment is expensive. So it's always old and outdated, out warranted. A lot of them aren't getting updates anymore because it's so old. I assume processing plants like that, they're not, that's not on the top of their budget like most companies. Like having to fight for new equipment, it's a fight. You really have to get down and really truly prove why you need this updated equipment.
What's up, Tim? Thanks for tuning in, man. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, most of these things are probably warranted for 3 years tops. And so they end up hiring a mechanical engineer to kind of upkeep them. My little brother he builds and fixes robots as a mechanical engineer. That's what he does. But more and more, I would probably assume that these different machines have to be monitored via a network that keeps track of their operation and their performance, right?
Oh yeah.
And if something is malfunctioning, they have some sort of sensor that is being monitored by a computer network, and those are vulnerabilities to Stuxnet, right? Anytime you have anything on a network, there's an opening that Stuxnet can exploit. And it just has to be uploaded to any point on that network in order to get a foothold.
So like at work, I have a monitoring system that I can bring up that blocks every incoming attack try. And it's insane.
Like how many attacks are we talking about?
In a minute or in an hour?
Let's start with a minute.
100?
100 in a minute, which is like 6,000 in an hour.
And it's constant. Bing, 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 bing. And that's why usually you take groups of IP addresses from certain countries and you just block them.
Yeah.
Because of that. But yeah, it's just you have a screen up and it's just bing, it's all these red letters showing bing, 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 that all this stuff that's getting hit and blocked. It's crazy to, and like where I work, it's not like a huge place that needs to be taken down. You know what I mean? It's not that kind of, but it's still, it's just the fact of trying.
Mm-hmm. And the question I have now is, okay, so these are outside attacks that we're already well familiar with. Stuxnet was something that the Iranians weren't really expecting. And is it possible for a worm to be reverse engineered and then turned back on the U.S.? I would say absolutely. That kind of thing happens all the time. Like viruses happen all the time.
Well, that's Stuxnet. It's meant to redo itself, hide, move to where it needs to. So, I mean, you could say that as it's doing that, it's going to go where it needs to.
It's going to go where it needs to. And also, it's very subtle. Like it doesn't engage in a way that is highly recognizable. Like with ransomware, you're getting hit with an attack. You're getting hit with an attack because you can't get in.
You can't get into the computer, and it says you need to pay us, or we have your information forever. DDoS, that's a DDoS, and you have these really aggressive attacks that can only work one time, because once they get in and they do their thing, your IT guy is going to come in and he's going to overhaul the security features and make sure that kind of thing can never happen again. Whereas
that's called job security, my friend.
Job security. Yeah. Whereas with Stuxnet,
well, after you get fired because it happened in the first place, but
right,
the next guy's job security.
Yeah. But Stuxnet seems to be operating in a completely different fashion. It is meant to be subtle. It is not meant to be aggressive. You're supposed to not know that it's even happening.
It's not meant to be malicious to the masses.
Right. You mentioned that earlier. It's not malicious to the masses. It's not going to affect your computer or my computer. If it was on my computer right now, I would never know it. And
it wouldn't care that it's there. It wouldn't do anything.
Yeah. It's just chilling. It's just chilling until it gets contact with the target electromechanical process that it needs to speed up or cause a malfunction. So that's why I think if there is
some Hadron Collider.
Yeah, what if it got into the Hadron Collider? What damage could it do? Like
black hole, baby, black hole.
Well, I feel like all of the kind of messed up things that have happened since the Hadron Collider turns on. Anytime they ramp that thing up, boom, suddenly we're in a different Mandela effect. Berenstain Bears versus Berenstein Bears or something like that. But yeah, I mean, they could do damage like that. But with respect to these fires that are not hypothetical, they're actually happening. I could see that this would be the result of one of these electromechanical viruses that is a progenitor, or a descendant, not a progenitor, a descendant of Stuxnet, if not Stuxnet itself. And that's kind of my thesis, is maybe we're looking at the wrong place. Maybe we're looking at this as they're looking at arson, traditional arson with gasoline or alcohol. Whereas I'm saying, let's look at the electromechanical processes and see if we've been infiltrated. Toom, how many fires have happened? 26 food plant fires since January of this year, and 2 fuel plant fires in the same time frame. So we're looking at 28 fires since January, which is a lot. Even considering the number of factories that there are, which is 36,000, that is still quite a bit. It's less than 1/1000th, but with all of the consumption that we have in locally and worldwide, we do produce a lot of food that we ship worldwide. Like that could end up really putting a strain on.
Popeyes needs a lot of chicken.
What's that?
I said Popeyes needs a lot of chicken.
Yeah, Popeyes does need a lot of chicken.
So you start slowing down some of these. Oh.
How many have happened in the last 5 years? I don't know.
I tried looking into seeing if anybody had tried to make a graph the last 5 years, and I couldn't really find anything until people really noticed and started, monitoring it by the middle of last year into this year.
Food and water situation is going to be strained horribly by 2025. You aren't kidding. It's looking like these fires are not having a large individual effect, but the cumulative effect is starting to kind of put some worry into.
I don't know, that Great Value mustard used to be 89 cents and it's like $2.28 now.
Yeah. It may be the case that it is having an inflationary effect. The price of food is going up. But in addition to these kinds of fires happening here,
other countries are reducing the amount of nitrogen-based fertilizers that they're allowing in their private farms. So
Here's the
Canada,
thought, real quick.
Netherlands. Go ahead.
Do you think this is America's way of making us skinny?
No.
Okay, let's make less food so everybody gets skinny.
No, I would say if you want to look at a conspiracy of that degree, it would be shutting down farmers. So that's what I was just referring to is Canada and the Netherlands are two countries that are limiting the amount of nitrogen adding fertilizers, which is going to greatly reduce the amount of productivity that these farms have. And it's going to create a humongous scarcity that will ultimately drive those farms out of business, allowing wealthy purchasers to come in and snatch them up for a reduced fee. Like Bill Gates, like the World Economic Forum type people, and they're also coming in and scooping up that land. And Bill Gates does have a lot of land. He's the largest single landowner in the United States right now. I think the second is probably China. China's buying up a lot of land here too. And it's getting really crazy. Toom says also crop reduction from grand solar minimum. The solar, you're referring to solar cycles. The sun goes through its own weather patterns. And they are, I think, every 25 years. They have kind of a ramp up, and then they reach a high point of solar activity, and then they come down for the next 12, 13 years, which is what you're referring to, the solar minimum, where there's a lot less activity. And it seems to be about every 22 to 25 years per cycle. And yeah, if that's the case, we may be in for cooler, less radiation coming from the sun, less aurora borealis. But I think what we're trying to do right now.
Cooler, I'm all for it.
Say that again.
So if it makes Phoenix cooler, I'm all for it.
You know, that's interesting you bring that up, because I think Phoenix is getting cooler, has been cooler this year, and it's been cooler than it was cooler this year than last year, and it was cooler last year than the year before. 2020 was very hot.
It needs to speed up then.
2020 was a very hot year. I think we hit at least 2 record highs, and record amount of days above 100 degrees, record amount of days above 110 degrees. And then it got cooler and more moist in 2021. It's cooler, but not as moist in 2022.
Doesn't feel cooler.
Well, I mean, it doesn't feel cooler compared to like a month ago, but if you were experiencing yourself 2 years ago when it was 120 degrees at this time of year, it's a lot better. At any rate, we're talking about these fires and these kinds of attacks on food production. Yeah, I think there are a lot of factors that are going to affect food production over the next short-term amount of years. But I want to go back to, is there a conspiracy here? And I think the last few weeks have taught us, if they've taught us anything, it's that don't trust the mainstream narrative on anything. If the government is saying, hey, there's nothing to see here, and they keep repeating that line, there's nothing to see here, then you know that there is something to see there. If the media,
if the FBI and the government is coming in to tell you this is what you're going to say, then there's a problem.
Right. So we have to challenge that narrative, because no one is talking about this type of connection. And if they had ruled something like that out, they said, we did check our electromechanical processes and make sure that there was no virus or worm attack or any kind of technological attack that was speeding up these electromechanical processes, then we've ruled that out. I'd be like, okay, well, whatever. But there's nothing like that. There hasn't been anything like that. And I think partly because there's a wide variety of malfunctions happening that are causing these fires. And so they're probably looking at it going, there's no way that they could be connected. There's no way that a corn or potato processing unit in Oregon has anything to do with a boiler in Indiana. There's no way those two things are related.
Well, if you have something that's designed to go after it.
Unless there's a worm that's designed to go after those processes. And I just don't think they're even looking there.
No. Because, by these articles and the stuff I read, there's nothing that even mentions that kind of attack. A technology attack. It's the suicide plane or the plane that went down or just something that randomly malfunctions. But nothing from saying that, and I guess maybe that's something they should actually check.
Yeah, and the question would be, is it still possible for them to check that? Because the machinery apparently becomes a total loss at the time that they're doing their check. So they'd have to go back.
It's got to be backed up to somewhere. Every alarm, everything is backed up somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not on, there's a server there somewhere that's backing up these alarms. Unless you shut them off.
Yeah.
So unless this, this worm or this, infiltration of this is part of it is to shut the alarms off, then yes, it would be very hard to find. Because there was no monitoring alarm that went off to let you know that the machinery was faulty.
Right. If you think about a lot of these types of systems have backups and alarms, like you just mentioned, and those types of malfunctions are supposed to be caught by those alarms and backups. But if they're not, and they're still going up in flames, it's like, there's got to be something more here than that you guys just aren't looking at, or that you aren't saying.
Because, like I said, I work for a smaller company, and I'll come into work from the night, and I'll have 400 emails of alarms going off and on and clearing and good, and you know what I mean, that I have to go through. It'll say, alarm, this went wrong. Nope, it cleared. Alarm, look into this. So, if you shut one of those off and it doesn't come in, then there's nothing to look at. But there's also on that too, there's so many alarms that is it easy to look past it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're trying to say, is that there's this history of a electromechanical virus called Stuxnet that we used that somebody used, probably the U.S. used against Iran in 2010, 2011. And that Iran vowed revenge, and we have never seen that revenge materialize until possibly now. And it's also possible that this is the warm-up, right? Maybe it's not that many right now.
Maybe this is the practice.
This could be the practice run. And if we're not paying attention, if we're not challenging the authorities and saying, look, you should be looking at Stuxnet. You should be looking at these types of electromechanical viruses that target machinery and cause them to malfunction. If you're not doing that, then you're not doing your job. You're certainly not keeping anybody safe.
But the way we live in right now, technological warfare is the best way. We don't even have to have one boot hit dirt.
Yeah.
We can just do it by a keystroke.
Keystroke.
And take down, boop. So I mean, that I would say this is the the world that we are living in.
Yeah, World War III isn't going to be as much bombs as it is, ransomware, viruses, and Stuxnet type attacks.
Yeah.
And even if you did want to send bombs, you would want to make sure that the target country is as demoralized and weakened as possible through starvation or shortages or things like that before you ever set foot on a battleship, climbed in an aircraft, sent a drone.
Cut them at the knees before you even have to get there.
Yeah. You'd want to soften the target up a lot. So I'd say that's kind of where I am hoping that we can do some more research on these fires, and look at possible technological attacks versus just strict arson or it's all accident, nothing to see here, because it seems like there's a lot more going on.
You think this could be as for a different agenda as well, though? So, like, I was reading one article that says Biden may be doing this to help with climate change, so that we have to redo our ways of making food for the masses.
So kind of a great reset type thing.
Like I think you said, yeah, just the different types of meat that we're going to have, not normally necessarily from the cow.
Yeah. So the main protein source that the Great Reset World Economic Forum folks want us to have is insects. They want us to eat bugs. You want to eat bugs, Kyle?
No.
Do you want to eat crickets and scorpions?
No, they're chewy.
But that's what they want us to eat, right? The World Economic Forum wants people to eat bugs. They want to reduce the amount of agriculture and ranching that is done worldwide, and their claim is that they want that to be reduced because of carbon emissions and environmental concerns.
I mean, cows do put off a lot of ethane.
Maybe so, but I'm not going to eat bugs, man. I'm not doing it.
Your 6 crickets is ready, sir.
Toom says, if the world ran out of food, we will end up eating anything. Here's the thing. So
I'm not going to eat what food eats. Sorry.
There's history for this. And that is, we don't even have to look that far. You can go back to the 20th century. That is when the communist revolution hit Russia and they became the Soviet Union. A lot of people starved. A lot were killed too. And what the first people to go were the good and moral people who said, we're not doing this. And the communists said, no, we are. And they killed them. And eventually people were starving so much that they would just carve up their dead kids and sell them for food. And it got really dark, man. It got real dark. The first settlers dug up dead bodies and ate them. Yeah, they did. A lot of them did because they were starving. They didn't have bugs to eat. They weren't going to eat bugs, but I'm not going to eat bugs either, man.
Ted's dead. Let's barbecue.
I'm sorry. I don't think it has to come to that. I'm going to do my damnedest to make sure it doesn't come to
that. Right. Not eating dead bodies, and I'm not eating crickets.
But there is a contingent of people out there who do want us to starve, who do want us to eat bugs. They want us to eat anything but what we're doing now. And I ain't
naked and afraid. I ain't eating bugs.
They're crazy. They want to send us back to the dark ages, man. They want to send us back to feudalism, and it's crazy. So to answer your question, Kyle, I hope it's not Biden. I hope it's not a domestic attack trying to reduce our food productivity. I pray to the God of America that is not the case.
I just don't want it to be like the Matrix where you get that slush.
Yeah. Yuck.
Yes. So.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what we're trying to say is keep track. If you haven't heard of these factory fires, open your eyes and start looking and seeing how many of these factory fires happen. I think the article that we were looking at was written in earlier this month, early July. And the last fire that had taken place as of the writing of the article, let me see. The article was written June 10th and then updated June 13th because between the time that they wrote the article and the time that the next fire happened was 3 days. So they wrote the article June 10th, and then 3 days later there was another fire. So keep your eyes open. It's not just food either. It's also these fuel processing facilities. Brian, crickets are good. Throw them in the meat fryer. They're good. Yeah, all this talk of starvation is making me hungry. Yeah, you bet it is.
Dude, I'm about to go eat a steak because they're not going to be around much longer.
Yeah, start packing on your winter blubber so you can weather the storm.
I'm good for 2 seasons.
Oh man. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We do appreciate all of your comments. Toom, Brian, hi Nathan. Thank you all for your comments. We really appreciate you. And to all the viewers who are kind of silently participating and maybe listening to us in the background, we appreciate you as well. We hope that our voices are everything that you're hoping for and keeping you tuned in and dialed in. We tackle topics that we think are important, things that are kind of eating away at us, but we also want to make sure that we're covering topics that you guys like as well, and the things that are bothering you or that are causing you a little bit of heartache. Hi, Nathan says, this was great and a bit scary. Yeah, it is a little scary.
The more I read up on this, I was going, crap. Now I realize why I used to like to stay in my bubble.
Right.
If I don't know what's going on, everything's okay. But if everybody does that, then we're in major problems.
Hi, Nathan says, your voices are soothing like smooth jazz. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I've been told that many times.
Smooth jazz. Anyway, but we hope we would love to see your comments about stuff that you're bothered by or that you want us to look at, and we will bring those topics to you. We'll do the research, and we'll figure out everything that we can. But in the meantime, until those topics come our way, make sure that you're liking and commenting and subscribing if you feel that we've earned it. We want to bring you the stuff that matters to you and the stuff that matters to us. And if we're kind of creating this community together, then all the better. But we really appreciate you guys. And until next time, Kyle, you got anything else you want to say?
No, you covered it.
Until next time, keep on exploring the edges of the unknown.
I'm ready to eat a steak now.